Thank you, Trish, for a beautiful opening to our service this morning. And welcome. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Door County. We are about to enter a sacred time. We are about to make this time and this place sacred by our presence and intention. Please turn off or silence your phones, and as you do, I invite us to also turn down the volume on our fears, to remove our invisible masks, and to loosen the armor around our hearts. Don't take my word for it. Do it slowly if you need to. If you take a little risk with these good people, you may find that they have the same human needs as you do. Breathe. Let go of the expectations placed on you by others and those they taught you to place on yourself. Let go of expectations, drop the guilt and the shame, not to shirk accountability, but in honest expectation of the possibility of forgiveness. Let go of the thing you said the other day. Let go of the thing you dread next week. Be here in this moment. Breathe. Here. My name's Donna Johnson. I'm your service leader this morning, and on behalf of the fellowship, I extend a special welcome to any visitors who may be with us today. It is our custom to ask visitors to introduce themselves. So if you are here for the first time or haven't been here in a while, we ask that you stand if you are able and tell us who you are, where you're from, and maybe a word or two about what brought you here today. Anyone wanting to introduce themselves?
Hello, I'm James. I'm from Pacific, Missouri, near St. Louis. My wife is a painter, so we come up here every year for the painting thing. Driven by here a whole bunch of times. Finally stopped in, and the anthrozoology thing is very appropriate. I also am a retired naturalist. So.
Excellent, welcome. Anyone else? Okay. At this time, if there are any announcements related to the fellowship, please share them now, and please wait for the microphone to be brought to you so that all may hear your announcement.
More lettuce in fridge.
Good morning, and today we have a special guest, and I held off on announcing her during, instead of doing it at the beginning, doing it during announcements, because this is Bianca Stanger, our UUFDC Social Justice Scholarship recipient for 2023. And she recently graduated from Sevastopol. She was an honor student, and she's going to be starting UW Milwaukee in the fall. And I'll let her tell you a little bit more about her plans.
Thank you. So I'm Bianca, and I'm the scholarship recipient. I'm from Brazil, and I came here in August of 2022 because I'm an exchange student. And I decided to stay for college, and I applied for scholarships, and thanks to you guys, I got this scholarship, and I'll be forever grateful. And my plans for college, I'll major in architecture at UW Milwaukee, and I'm super excited.
Wonderful.
Anybody else?
Okay. Thank you. I'm very pleased to welcome back Dale Goodner as our speaker this morning. Dale retired as the Peoria Park District Supervisor of Interpretive Services in 2009 after a distinguished 3.5-decade career as an interpretive naturalist. He and his wife, Mary, were members of the UU Church in Peoria. They chose to spend their retirement in Northeast Wisconsin, currently living in Algoma. And I know everyone is looking forward to hearing what Dale has to share with us. We light this chalice in honor of the animal realm, furred and hooved, two-legged, four-legged, and many-legged, fanged and clawed, gentle and fierce, wild and tame. May we remember that all animals are our relatives, worthy of our care and respect. Please stand in body or spirit to sing hymn number 203. We'll sing verses 1 through 4, all creatures of the earth and sky, and then please remain standing for the unison affirmation followed by the singing of the doxology. All creatures of the earth and sky, come, kindred, lift your voices high. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Bright burning sun with golden beam, soft shining moon with silver gleam. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Swift rushing winds so wild and strong, bright clouds that sail in heaven along. Hallelujah, hallelujah. The rising morning birds rejoice. Bright stars of evening find a voice. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Flowing water pure and clear, make music for all life to hear. Hallelujah, hallelujah. This flame of fire so strong and bright, and us so sweet more than light. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Embracing earth you day by day, bring forth your blessings on our way. Hallelujah, hallelujah. All herbs and fruits that richly grow, and ample glory also show. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. We gather together to seek knowledge and wisdom, to explore freely the vast reaches of mind and spirit, to celebrate within a caring community those truths, ancient and modern, which give meaning and direction to our lives. At this time, you are invited to share any joys you may have so that we may celebrate with you. Or if you have concerns that burden you, feel free to share so that we may offer solace and support. Please identify yourself when you share, and please wait for Carol to bring the microphone to you. Keep in mind that the service is being broadcast and will be on the internet, so please do not share about another person or persons if you do not have their permission to do so. Any?
I had a lovely hike yesterday with my friend Lynn. But I was foolish enough not to bring my walking stick, and I tripped on a rock and fell flat on my face. And I hurt a little today, but I'm happy it's not any worse. And your lip's not as fat as we thought it was going to be. I think most of you have noticed Sally is back with us. And we are delighted she is well on the way to recovery.
I also wanted to recognize that Al Johnson is with us this morning. It's wonderful. I'm sorry, my name is Carrie Link. I forgot to say that. My concern is that Diane Daniel is in the hospital in ICU. She went in, we took her in on Thursday. She still is in ICU, has 2 things going on, norovirus and E. coli, and I think she might be septic. So please just keep her in your thoughts. Thank you.
Well, I am very grateful to have just celebrated my 80th birthday yesterday by riding 30 miles on Washington Island
Wow.
and then going to a Ephraim Historical Foundation party where somebody snitched and I was sung happy birthday to by about 210 people. But you know, I'm too old to be embarrassed. Anybody else?
We will now accept your offerings. If you prefer, you can make your donation online from our website, uufdc.org, and you'll find the donate button on the far right of the homepage. It's easy, safe, and secure to make your payment there. Please give generously to support the work of this fellowship. Please join in a moment of quiet.
You know, a fellow I used to know, a friend of mine, he used to say, I used to be tired. Now I'm retired. Well, if little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet, eating her curds and whey, along came a spider who sat down beside her and frightened Miss Muffet away. But if little Miss Muffet had sat on her tuffet and refused to be frightened away, that lone little spider who sat there beside her could never have ruined her day. Fear of spiders is widespread, but is more common among those of European descent. This can be traced back 1,000 years to the false belief that the bubonic plague, which killed up to half of the European population, astonishing number, isn't it? Was being spread by spiders. It was actually spread by fleas from rats. To this day, flea bites are often misidentified as spider bites. There is no need to fear spiders. Anthrozoology is the scientific study of human-animal interaction. A comparatively new discipline, it incorporates several other ologies: psychology, zoology, anthropology, ethology, ethnology. A major focus of this research is quantifying the effect of our relationship with critters as partners, pets, domestic livestock, and wildlife. But what makes this interdisciplinary approach unique is that it takes into account the both ends of the leash. For example, in what ways has human evolution been influenced by our close association with these animals? The Inuit have said that to survive in harsh Arctic environs, they depend on their dogs for transportation, protection, warmth, companionship, etc. This is one example of a culture that's been able to overcome extreme environmental challenges thanks to its canines. The dogs depend on human hunters to care for and feed them in the far north. Both benefit. It's unlikely either could survive in the Arctic without this relationship. Sheep herders have long depended on their sheepdogs to control flocks, particularly on hard-to-access rocky slopes. Today, dogs serve many practical functions, as you know, besides being family friends. They help blind people navigate. They serve as service animals, locate victims in search and rescue operations, function as guard dogs, etc. It's remarkable that dogs from Chihuahuas to St. Bernards, from Dachshunds to Great Danes, are all descended from wolves. All within the past 40,000 years. Their influence on us are perhaps more subtle, but just as real. Within the past 10,000 years, our associations with horses and cattle have greatly widened human horizons. Cattle provided a means to make grasses edible by virtue of their own bodies. Horses provided the perfect transportation to cover great distances, to hunt, to defend territory, and as anyone who has been close to horses could attest, to provide friendship. Psychoanalyst Erich Fromm first described biophilia as the passionate love of life and of all that is alive. The term was later used by American biologist E.O. Wilson in his book, Biophilia, which proposed the tendency of humans to focus on and to affiliate with nature and animals in particular has in part a genetic basis. You've heard of genetic memory? Highways take a toll on animals every day. Those of us who travel here by car have probably noticed that today. We often see dead deer, raccoons, opossums, skunks along the road, victimized by accidental encounters. By the way, notice most of these victims are victims of their own behavior. There are certain animals you'd hardly ever see as a roadkill. But there are some, remember the story, why did the chicken cross the road? To prove to the opossum that it could be done. Roads and vehicles are fitting subjects for anthrozoology. It's a young science, so they're just starting to delve into some of this stuff. You can get a PhD in that now, in anthrozoology. Dr. Hal Herzog in Psychology Today quoted a Canadian study in which false turtles and snakes, fake, I should say, were placed on a rural highway. Researchers recorded the responses of motorists to the perceived wildlife. As you might expect, the snake was most commonly victimized. They discovered that kindness to animals could fit a normal bell curve distribution. 94% of drivers, middle of the curve, chose to live and let live and drove on. The extremes on either end of the curve were of particular interest. 3% pulled over attempting to help the animal off the road. Have any of you done that? If you find a turtle crossing a road, never turn him around and put him the other way. Always put him where he's facing. He'll turn right around and go right back. The other 3% veered toward the fake animals intentionally to hit them. Men were over 3 times as likely as women to intentionally hit the fake animals. This could be attributed to a fear factor. Psychologists don't agree on why a fear of snakes seems to be one of our more pervasive animal phobias. It's complicated. Is it instinct or learned fear or cultural aversion? Maybe there's even a weird factor. Snakes, after all, are pretty unlike us mammals. Culture has a lot to do with attitude. Depicted as the bad guy in the Garden of Eden, snakes had a problem right off the bat. But why a snake? Coincidentally, the Egyptians, around 3,000 years ago, when a lot of these biblical stories were penned, is that a proper word to use, when penned? They revered snakes as sacred. They didn't exactly get along well with the Jews, with the Hebrew folks, as you know. So that in a manner of speaking, it makes a certain amount of sense. Snakes occasionally shed their skin, which is magic. They look brand new. I lost my place. If this appears in America, snake societies among First Nation tribes were associated with healing. And that's almost a ubiquitous fact. Snakes are associated with healing in those cultures. But we're no different. We also associate snakes with healing. Our medical facilities are decorated with the familiar snake wrapped around a staff. 2 snakes on the staff would be the caduceus. Unless you're into Latin, it would be a caduceus. But if there's just one snake, it's on the staff of Asclepius. Mary pointed out that that's the genus of milkweed. What a coincidence. Complicated chemicals in there. It's medicinal. The staff is named after Asclepius, but Asclepius is the one in Greek mythology that represents health. If you see the 2 snakes, ironically, they're associated with thieves and problems. in mythology. But, well, anyway, the point is, generally, snakes are seldom mythological bad guys. We're sort of an exception with the Garden of Eden. There are many plants called snake root. I'm sure many of you have noticed that. They're unrelated morphologically. So why are they all called snake root? What they have in common are medicinal properties. For example, white snake root, very common. White snake root is a medicinal herb, but was also the cause of milk sick, which some of you might recall. That's what Abraham Lincoln's mother died from when he was 9 years old. The chemical trematol concentrates in cow's milk and becomes toxic. And you can tell when a cow has been eating white snake root. It's trembling. It's called the trembles. That's trematol. You don't milk that cow. Well, at the Nature Center, I received many calls regarding critter questions, never dealt with in biology textbooks. For example, a woman wanted to know how she could attract bald-faced hornets to nest in the eaves of her house. Think about that for just a moment. I asked her, why hornets? Turns out she had called me the previous year wanting to know how to get rid of a volleyball-sized hornet nest, which was located in her eave. I had given her several suggestions, but then I asked her whether they were bothersome. Had they stung anybody? No. Were they in a place where she needed access? No. Second story. So I suggested that she consider doing nothing. As I said before, it's easy and it's cheap. The nest would be gone on its own. It will not be reoccupied. And I said, you might be surprised at how beneficial they can be. So, bald-faced hornets are large and black with cream-colored head and tail. Robert Frost referred to them as the white-tailed hornets. I like his word better than bald-faced. I don't know. Away from their nest, they are non-aggressive. You can walk right, I've done this. So with hand lens and the camera, you go right to them and take close-up pictures. They don't care. They're not the same coming out of the nest. Any of you who've experienced that, when I was a little guy, I approached a big hornet nest at my grandmother's backyard. It was maybe 5 feet above the ground. I got to within 10 feet and stopped. Bad choice. They have a guard hornet. And it took off from that. It was a blurry fastball. In the strike zone, my swing was late. I was out. Right in the chin. It's impressive. Anyway, as long as it doesn't happen, you're good to leave it alone. Well, they're away from the net. Okay, she watched them take pests off of her garden plants, which they're predators. They take those and feed them back to the critters in their nest. Even saw them taking flies on the wing. When you have family and friends come over and you're on a picnic table or something and the flies join you, the hornets were coming through, and when it left, the fly was gone. I didn't believe that until I watched hornets doing that up in the boundary waters. Those little biting flies that sting your ankles? Well, they would come to the campfire and hang around. Well, the hornets were taking them on the wing. Because I've watched hornets, they'll go up to a cherry pit. It's kind of humorous. They'll try to wrestle with it, fall over. And then in those days, I never heard that it's possible for insects to play. They've observed play behavior in insects. Would they just mess around with something? I thought he was trying to prey on a cherry pit. Maybe he was. Or going after a nail head. But anyway, their behavior is really interesting, but the point being that they can be very helpful. They became her hornets. The neighbor said, "You need to get rid of that nest." She said, "Those are my hornets." That's the kind of thing that anthrozoology would be, if they could accomplish that for a few folks, it'd save us a lot of problems. She wanted them back. She said, "Do you think if I smeared some honey up there?" And I said, "I think if you did that, about all you might attract is ants. I know of no way to motivate a hornet." Another caller had called, and she had we always have issues going on with critters, and that's what keeps the job interesting. I'm sure you had the same experience in Missouri. She had a vibrating bat and wanted to know what was wrong with it. I went to the house. I have never seen a bat trembling so ever. So I picked it up in a box and I brought it back to the Nature Center called Bat Conservation International down in Texas. And they said, put it in a Ziploc bag and put it in the freezer. And then send it to the health department and have them examine its head. So that's what, and by the way, the symptoms were not indicative of rabies at all. So I was about to freeze it. I went in the back. Since I kept a tarantula for program purposes, I happened to have feeder crickets. So just on a whim, I took a cricket out, ran water over it, and I put it in the mouth of that little trembling bat. He was trying to be mean, he's going to, but when he tasted that cricket, whoa, he ended up taking several. Poor thing was starving. So I postponed freezing it. Instead, I fed it at intervals and watched the trembling dissipate. The bat regained its health and really began looking forward to my visits. After about 9 days, I released it to the night sky. It flew away. As to the cause of the vibrating, pesticide poisoning. Where I picked it up, the lawns were perfect. In other words, ugly. Green mats with no life. So apparently, people spray for what? Dandelions, mosquitoes, you name it. Well, those poisons, I'm getting ahead of myself. When you put poisons into the web of life, they don't know when to quit. They keep poisoning. And I'm certain that's what happened to this bat. Spiders. That's another thing. They spray for spiders. Now, you all know that spiders are fed by hummingbirds to their nestlings. Other small birds do the same thing. But why? Because spiders have a different set of amino acids. It helps the young grow faster and get off the nest quicker, unless it's a toxic spider. How does the hummingbird know? So, I'm sure when people spray for spiders around the house, they're not spraying to harm hummingbirds. But we have to make those kinds of connections. That's a challenge for anthrozoology, to start learning that we're in a system that's complex. We need to fit in better. Well, I should stick to the subject I'll be talking. I get sidetracked. According to the Anthrozoology Institute, quote, "The relationship between mankind and the natural world is a key issue for this century. Truer words were never spoken. As human activities come into more and more conflict with other species, anthrozoology will have an increasing role to play in determining and shaping human attitudes and behaviors toward animals in general and domestic species in particular," unquote. Given recent trends in dairy farming, there will be much on which to focus right here in Wisconsin. My Norwegian great uncle Glenn milked his 40 or so cows twice a day, every day. I once asked him if he ever got a vacation. And he looked at me with surprise. Where would I go? It occurred to me that dairy farming wasn't just what he did, it's who he was. His relationship with his family, his animals, his farm was special. He knew his cows by name and always knew if there was something wrong. Today, the animals we depend upon for dairy are increasingly housed in very large confinements and spend their lives sardined by the thousands into these huge sheds. They don't have names. They're called animal units. This relationship doesn't impact just the animals, but also the people who oversee them. That, to me, is what's interesting. If you start treating animals like that, what does it do in your head? Uncle Glenn has been gone for many, many years, but I can imagine he'd be heartbroken to see what dairy is, where it's going. Wisconsin's family dairy farms continue to disappear at the rate of one each day. Rural economies continue to dry up. Within the past 4 decades, 40,000 family dairy farms have gone out of business. As mechanized milk production increases, some say as the population grows, this centralization is necessary. How many of you have ever heard of Ernst Schumacher, E.F. Schumacher? He's an economist. How many of you ever heard the book Small is Beautiful? It's his book. He had a very different idea of how we should navigate a sustainable future. He called it permanence. We call it sustainability. By the way, he'd be surprised. His book, Small is Beautiful, was published in 1973. It became recognized as one of the most influential books since World War II. Schumacher suggests, quote, the economics of giantism and automation is a leftover of 19th century conditions and 19th century thinking and is totally incapable of solving any of the real problems of today. An entirely new system of thought is needed, a system based on attention to people, not primarily attention to goods. Goods will look after themselves. For the sake of our domestic animals, that's an end of quote. For the sake of our domesticated animals and farm workers, it could be summed up with Schumacher's phrase, production by the masses rather than mass production. He asserted the aim ought to be to obtain the maximum amount of well-being with the minimum amount of consumption. To this, I might add the maximum well-being for the animals we use for milk and meat production, as well as for us. Whether you're looking at mining, logging, fisheries, agriculture, according to Schumacher, quote, one of the most fateful errors of our age is the belief that the problem of production has been solved. The illusion is mainly due to our inability to recognize that the modern industrial system, with all its intellectual sophistication, consumes the very basis on which it has been erected. To use the language of The Economist, it lives on irreplaceable capital, which it cheerfully treats as income. But this capital or wealth is an elusive value. That's end of quote up there, income. This capital or wealth is an elusive value that has very much to do with clean air, water, living soil, biodiversity, and that very hard to define thing called beauty. According to Gaylord Nelson, this is what makes Wisconsin attractive to tourists, retirees, and businesses. Helping people reconnect with our fellow critters has never been more important than it is right now. It starts with kids. I attended a conference that featured the benefits of storytelling and decided to give it a try. I made up a story on one of my nature hikes. And I was amazed at how effectively it captured their attention. You know, you say, hey, you guys, listen up, look over here, you know, point, you guys over there, stop, pay attention. This one, they're right on. And like, Dick, you do that so well. But rather than asking the kids to look at a web, I paused near a large spider web and asked how many have heard of Lake Michigan. A long time ago, there was a fellow named Yellow Wolf who lived near this lake, and he loved fish. But every time he tried to catch one, it would swim quickly away. So, hungry and sad, he sat there near the water looking at a web exactly like this one, the one where I had stopped, and they'd look over at it. Orb weaver, big. As he watched, an insect flew by and got caught. The spider had lunch, and Yellow Wolf had an idea. What do you suppose he invented? Spiders can be teachers. After all, they've been around for just about 400 million years. Think about that. That's a couple 100 million before the dinosaurs. They've learned a few things. Did you know they vocalize? I never knew that. I had to buy a book about it. Anyway, Mahatma Gandhi may not have been aware of anthrozoology, but yet he put it well. To sum up, quote, "The greatness of a nation can be judged by the way its animals are treated." Thank you very much.
Please stand in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 163, For the Earth Forever Turning. I'm sure you'll be familiar with the closing words, but here goes. Oh, if I could talk to the animals, just imagine it. Chatting with a chimp and chimpanzee. Imagine talking to a tiger, chatting with a cheetah. What a neat achievement it would be. If we could talk to the animals and learn their languages, maybe take an animal degree. I'd study elephant and eagle, buffalo and beagle, alligator, guinea pig, and flea. I would converse in polar bear and python. I would curse in fluent kangaroo. If people asked me, "Can you speak rhinoceros?" I'd say, "Of courseurus, can't you?" If I conferred with our furry friends, woman to animal, think of the amazing repartee. If I could walk with the animals and talk with the animals, grunt and squeak and squawk with the animals, and Lord, they could talk to me. If I could talk to the animals, think what fun we'd have asking over crocodiles for tea. Or maybe lunch with 2 or 3 lions, walruses, and sea lions. What a lovely place the world would be. If I spoke slang to orangutan, oh, the advantages any fool on earth could plainly see. Discussing Eastern art and dramas with intellectual llamas, that's a big step forward, you'll agree. I'd learn to speak in antelope and turtle. My Pekingese would be extremely good. If I were asked to sing in hippopotamus, I'd say, why notamus? And I would. If you stop and think of it, there's no doubt of it. I could win a place in history. If I could walk with the animals and talk with the animals, grunt and squeak and squawk with the animals, and they could squeak and squawk and speak and talk to me. The animals and me, can't you see me with them? We're walking like friends, talking back and forth. Down the road we go, me and the animals. As flame is to spirit, so spirit is to breath, and breath to song. Though we extinguish the flame in this sanctuary, may we tend it in our hearts until we meet again. May it be so.